Breaking news, I'm Eric Casilius. It's from the NFL, where the players have approved a proposed labor deal that would ensure labor peace in the NFL through the 2030 season. That's a long deal, a long time. Both sides give, both sides get. What does it all mean? What does it mean for you as a fan? JLC, Jonathan Jones, standing by, chomping at the bit. You'll be the smartest person in the room. It's all straight ahead. Breaking news, the NFL players have approved the proposed CBA. That means labor peace between players and owners through the year 2030. That is a 10-year agreement. No strikes, no lockouts, labor peace. What does it mean? What are the details? How does it affect you as a fan? I'm going to get to that in a second, but first, here's the NFLPA statement on collective bargaining. NFL players have voted to approve ratification of a new collective bargaining agreement by a vote tally of 1,019 to 959. This result comes after a long and democratic process in accordance with our Constitution. An independent auditor received submitted ballots through a secure electronic platform, then verified, tallied, and certified the results. In other words, it's official. We vote yes. All right, Jason Lockenford jumps aboard. Jonathan Jones as well. Love having those guys here. All right, I'm a fan. I just see, okay, it's a yes vote, and it seems like it's pretty close. How does this translate? I mean, what do you make of the fact that this is a yes vote and it's so close, JLC?
Well, I mean, look, they only needed a plurality. They needed one more person to vote for it than didn't for it to pass. I don't know that you were going to see a wide margin one way or the other, but if you look at that number, slightly over 1,000 guys voted yes. There's about 1,100 NFL players making the vet minimum. I don't think it's a coincidence that you're looking at, you know, if we were ever able to dig deep in the numbers and see how many guys voted yes, we're making, you know, $1 million a year or less, I suspect there's a causal relationship there. And for the fan and the average person, I don't know that you really need to get too bogged down in the weeds with how it all transpired and how we had deadlines shifting around and things being pushed back and how we eventually got here. I was reporting at the Combine last year, 2019, that the sides were making serious progress towards a new collective bargaining agreement with, at that point, 2 years left on the current deal. They continue to slog through the process. Is it a perfect deal? No, and I think the numbers reflect that. But in an economic climate that now seems even more uncertain than ever, given the global pandemic we're dealing with, given that the TV deals now are on the horizon, the NFL can sink their teeth back in them, extend those deals, get a streaming company, Netflix, Google, whoever in there to stream the international games, sell that as a separate TV package. That's more money for the players. That's more money in the pot. A 17th game, whenever that starts, maybe as soon as 2021, that's more money in the pot. And ultimately, players sat down with their wives and family members and decided what made sense for them. And a 20% raise and less risk of getting hurt in the preseason because preseason shrunk now, and an easier path to benefits and pensions and more jobs, which means if I'm going year to year in a bunch of one-year contracts, my odds of sticking around for another year might be better because we're expanding the rosters. And I think through this deal, remember, these deals aren't set in stone. They're constantly evolving. At some point, I think we'll see through the life of this contract, all 53 guys active on the game day roster. That would be more money for players. I think in the short term, for the average NFL player, it made a lot of sense for him. Is the deal too long from the player's side? Probably. Should there be some opt-out? Sure. Should every team have to spend 90% to the cap every year and not over a 3 or 4 year period? I believe yes, but it's a negotiation. It's give and take. And, JJ, you know, no one's ever going to get everything they want when it's millionaires against billionaires.
That's right, JJ. When you look at this deal and you check it out and you say, okay, 1,019 to 959, your reaction to the yes vote, were you surprised? Were you surprised it was this close? And what should I take from this as a fan?
I actually am surprised that it was this close. You know, you look at it and it's 60 votes, but really if 31 other players if they voted yes, voted no, this would not have passed. Literally just 31, because all this needed was the simple majority, right? 50% plus one. And so that is really what stands out to me. 31 players is a razor-thin margin, in my opinion. Now, what it means for the fan, first of all, the fan should be elated, because the fan, as JLC points out, should not want to get into the weeds on this. They shouldn't want to be in the tall grass. They're happy that there's going to be labor peace, that there's not going to be a lockout, that just like what we experienced in 2011, oh my gosh, what are going to happen to my NFL Sundays? You do not have to worry about that right now for the foreseeable future. Now, of course, the global pandemic and coronavirus, that could touch us going down the road into September. That's a long way away. But in terms of where we are with labor, we do not have to worry about that. The fan is not going to read the 500-some pages of this CBA and get down in the dirt on that. Now, as far as the players go, JLC touched on it. There's going to be some give and take. Obviously, the 17th game opens up the door. Hey, you added one game. What's it going to be in 10 years when they want to add an 18th game? And the players had to decide what we get in return for that 17th game. Is it worth it? 48% of the annual revenue. It's going to tick up to 48.5%. Can they get some revenue from gambling? Once gambling is figured out, I think a lot of people believe that there's this huge cash cow with sports gambling and that everyone's going to get rich off it. Well, everyone's going to want their piece. The local government, the casinos, the NFL teams, the players, everyone's going to want their piece, and there are still many decisions that have to be made in terms of who's going to get what pieces of that money. And so that may not be as large a pie as a lot of people are expecting. Now, in terms of what did the players not get? Well, the comp picks are still out there, and that encourages teams to let go of the guys that they brought on and not re-sign their own. The franchise tag still remains, and so you can get some veterans at a cost-controlled contract. Guys who should be making more out there on the open market, you can retain them for what would be less than fair wage for them. The rookie contracts remain the same length. Now, of course, they with the fifth-year option, there are incentives added to that. It is now guaranteed when you extend that fifth-year option, and so that locks them in, and that is overall good. But again, NFL owners and team executives can lock in a rookie for essentially 6 years and pay them below cost for most of their contract. Look no further than the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. Nothing with that has materially changed with that. And then JLC touched on it, the 90% cash spend to the cap. Nothing really changed with that 3 to 4 years, so teams can still tank. That still leaves that door wide open for teams, and so I understand that players may not feel all that great about it. There were reports out there, and I certainly do understand, as more information came out about this CBA, that some players may have said, ooh, I voted early on this, now I want to change my vote. I think that speaks to union leadership. I think that speaks to having everything on the table early on, and I know this was a little slipshod, a little haphazard. This did not go as smoothly as everyone wanted, even without the threat of coronavirus that was going on. This was not moving smoothly before all of that became even more real to the NFL and to the United States at large. And so ultimately, I am not surprised for many reasons that JLC espoused that this did pass. However, razor-thin margin, and if 31 who voted yes voted no, we would not be having this discussion.
Yeah, another way to say that, and I'm with you, if one guy on each team flipped their vote from yes to no, just one guy on each team, this would have been a no, right? That's the way I was sort of looking at it. All right, JLC, how does this change? I'll be Joe fan here. How does this change my Sunday or Sundays? I mean, what's the simple? What's in it for me? Everyone has a certain aspect of that. I'll be the what's in it for me guy as a fan. How does this collective bargaining agreement impact my life as a fan?
Well, you know, every team is going to be playing a neutral site game pretty much. At some point when we get to it, when we do expand the schedule, you're going to have more neutral site games. A lot of them international, but some may be. I've heard buzz about playing a game at Notre Dame. How about the Browns and the Bengals in Ann Arbor at the Big House in December? You know, games in Vancouver. You know, a lot of different things on the table. Maybe a game in Tuscaloosa, the Falcons and the Panthers, you know, down in Alabama. They're going to use that 17th game as a vehicle to grow the pie and expose more people to NFL football. I also think throughout the course of this 10-year document, at some point we will be down to two preseason games and then a padded practice for each team. I'd be shocked if there's still three preseason games, even a couple of years into this. So you're not saddled, with the cost of that if you're a season ticket holder. There's going to be more inventory of football. The way you consume football is going to change. They're adding an entire TV package. They don't have to take a single game away from the 2 Sunday packages, the Sunday night package, the Thursday night package, or the Monday night package to create another 10 to, depending how this evolves, maybe 14, 16-week inventory of all these international and neutral site games that I continue to hear are likely to be on some kind of streaming service unless your team is playing in that game that week in your home market. Then you would still get it over the air. So that's more football. And just one thing we haven't touched on to this point in the short term, because we now have this new ratified CBA, the idea that teams could use 2 tags, a franchise and a transition, is out the door. We are no longer operating in what would have been the final league year under the old CBA, where teams would have had that mechanism. So if you're a fan of the Cowboys, if you're a fan of the Titans, if you're a fan of the Bucks, you know that Jameis and Shaq Barrett's going to get tagged. Jameis is going to be a UFA. Maybe he comes back to Tampa, maybe not. The Cowboys, Dak Prescott going to get that exclusive rights franchise tag. Amari Cooper will be an unrestricted free agent. Jerry Jones still has the wherewithal to sign him, but he's got to compete with other teams. He can't restrict his ability in any regard. And the Titans, where you've got Ryan Tannehill, you've got Conklin, you've got Derrick Henry, who's going to get the tag? And do they really go all in for Tom Brady the way some are suggesting? We're going to get the answers to some of these questions sooner rather than later, even if the new league year doesn't start the way it's currently scheduled to. And I've been hearing for a while now and talking about it on HQ and writing about it on CBSSports.com. Based on all my reporting, teams will be irate if they really do try to start this thing on Wednesday.
All right, so Jonathan, I keep hearing, 17 games. We're going to 17 games. We're eventually going to 17 games. When is the soonest we will have a 17-game season, and when will be the latest we would start having a 17-game season in your mind?
Yeah, it will not be happening in 2020. We do know that. And so when and if this season goes off without a hitch, and hopefully everything that we are experiencing right now as a country, as a world, settles down by the week after Labor Day, and we're playing NFL Sunday football and all that, it's not going to happen this year. We're going to have a 16-game season. Now, we can certainly extend the playoffs this season and have that 7th seed in there. But right now, it seems like it's going to be at least 2 years. I would say some kind of sweet spot might be 2023 before we see that 17-game season. Important to note, of course, that they've not added a bye week to this, and so they've taken away that preseason game but not added a bye here, and that's something that, to editorialize for a moment, I certainly would have, if I were on the union side, pushed very, very hard for to get another week off there. And so as far as what the fan can experience, another thing is, when you're talking about the fan and the fan experience, and I know a lot of people have talked about if NFL free agency begins on Wednesday, and we obviously are going to continue experiencing across this country what we are right now, that the optics of it may look bad, that so-and-so gets a $110 million contract, as some people, especially hourly workers, are wondering if they're going to have a job next week. That could look bad. And I say that to say that the optics of this for the fan, for the totality of this 10-year CBA, is that the minimum salaries on a rookie in 2019 will be minimum more than $1 million per year. And so right now, you can be an undrafted rookie, go into the NFL, stick around for a year, make about $500,000, and ultimately, if you wash out after taxes, you didn't make that much money, right? No one really got rich ultimately over the long course of this. But you can make $1 million pre-tax 10 years from now, that same undrafted rookie who sticks around for just 1 year, and those numbers are going to continue to go up. As we see the cap spike, as it goes up by 10 to 12 million, as it has in the previous years, but then we're going to see that TV contract spike coming up in a couple of years where we can see, honestly, the salary cap go up by 20, 25, $30 million from 1 year to the next. We're going to see gigantic contracts. And so where in the past year, it might seem mind-numbing that Dak Prescott could get $40 million per year. Why would he ever ask for that? There's no way. 5 years from now, $40 million might be the going rate for a Blake Bortles-like type quarterback. And that might be a stretch, but we are not that far away from a guy who is really the 15th best quarterback in the NFL getting just absolute serious, mind-blowing money. And so that, from a fan perspective, is what can absolutely change and what fans need to start wrapping their heads around, because there's going to be a lot more money in these NFL contracts.
JLC, ultimately, do you feel like this pandemic, the coronavirus that has been on, and everybody in the forefront, everybody's mind, did this impact the vote? Does this impact getting a deal done? Do you think if there was no coronavirus, we'd have the same numbers? Or is it just, hey, it passed, who cares? The vote doesn't matter. It was going to pass either way. And now fans know 17 games, not this year, but down the pike.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to guess. I mean, I haven't had a chance to reach out to anybody since this just came down and we've been on air. May it have affected some guys? Possibly. It could go either way. Some guys might look at this and say, hey, nothing is guaranteed anymore. There's literally no sports to speak of right now. I can't even coach my kids' Little League team if I wanted to because all that's been shuttered. I better take whatever's on the table right now. At 10 years of labor security, even if I don't love the deal, and even if I wasn't inclined to vote for it before, could some individuals have been moved to do it? Possibly. I think some other guys could also look at it and say, wait a minute, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. We still don't know exactly if the league year is going to start on time. I'm having difficulty processing everything that's going on in my life. I don't want to make a 10-year commitment to anything right now. So I would just be guessing. But the reality was, the moment they put the bullet points out, and by they I mean the NFLPA, when they released the bullet points of this deal and what it would mean for the average NFL player, before the executive committee and before the player reps voted, I started hearing strongly at that point, this thing's going to pass. Because now you've showed it to the rank and file. And even if it didn't get through their voting process to get down to the average player, a lot of players would have been making a lot of noise saying, wait a minute, why don't I get a voice in that too? Just because I'm not a union rep, I can't get a voice in that? So the ball started moving in that direction then. And then once it got to the rank and file, most of these guys, the deal makes financial sense for them.
JLC, let me follow up there. Am I getting 14 playoff teams this year? I mean, are we going to have that 7th team in each conference right now? Is 12 teams each? Let me go to Jonathan, actually. JJ, is the days of 12 playoff teams over? I mean, are we now at 14 playoff teams effectively this year?
Yeah, sadly, in my opinion, I felt that the NFL playoffs had it right, that there was an exclusive group teams that, yeah, you can get a team that goes 7-8-1, like the 2014 Carolina Panthers, wins the division, gets a home game. If you want to tweak that, then okay. I hear those arguments, I accept them. But those days are over, and what we're ultimately going to get is only one team gets a bye. And this past season, what you would have had, I believe, are the Kansas City Chiefs playing the 7th seed Pittsburgh Steelers. So you were going to get Patrick Mahomes in a wild card game against Duck Hodges or Mason Rudolph. I don't want to expose the Kansas City Chiefs, who were one of the best teams in the NFL throughout the season, ultimately were the best team in the NFL as crowned in Super Bowl 54. They would have not gotten that first round bye. And let's say they go through that gauntlet and they play those 3 games and they win. And then they meet the San Francisco 49ers in the Super Bowl. Yes, they still had the bye before the Super Bowl, but what you have is a San Francisco 49ers team that had that previous bye. All they had to do was win the divisional round, of course, and then the conference championship game, and there's more risk for injury for your Super Bowl MVP and Patrick Mahomes in those previous games, of course, because he played another game. I just think that when you take away a bye from that number 2 seed, that's too great you're taking too much away from a fantastic team, a team that, in my opinion, earned it. And I don't think that that is equitable. And I understand always trying to find new money in revenue and whatnot. I've said for a very long time, we've been going down this path, obviously in the NBA, MLB starting to do it. It's that the advertising patch on jerseys, I don't think that ruins the game of football, and each team could get somewhere on the order of $10, $15, $20 million if you're the Dallas Cowboys for a small patch on the chest of your jersey. If you're looking for money that badly, would it equal, of course, the TV contracts of 2 extra playoff games? No, not necessarily. But it wouldn't mess up what is, in my opinion, the best postseason that you have out there. And I'll just say this, one other thing, and that JLC is absolutely right that I've spoken with a number of team execs and coaches, and I've said to them over text message, hey, do you think that free agency is going to start on time? So far, or hope so, those have been the two main responses that I've gotten. But if I were a player and I was presented this CBA, and maybe I voted yes at first and then I wanted to change my vote to no, especially if I'm one of those players, and I was given this deadline because it has to be in place by the start of free agency, and now it's in place by the start of free agency, and then in the next 24 to 48 to 72 hours, you change the start of free agency, that I could have had more time with my vote, that I could have potentially changed my vote, that I could have worked very hard with my player, with my union rep, or if I were a union rep, with the executive committee and D. Smith in order to get more out of this CBA. I would be livid if I were a player who maybe was yes and then turned to no, or I was on the fence. I would be absolutely livid if I were given this deadline that was a firm and hard deadline that turned out to be an arbitrary deadline.
All right, excellent work. Certainly appreciate that, gentlemen. Making it clear on what can sometimes, get a little sticky and thick. You made it so we can understand it, what it means for the fans. Bottom line, it passes. NFL players have voted to approve ratification of a new collective bargaining agreement by a vote tally of 1,019 to 959. This result comes after a long and democratic process in accordance with our Constitution. An independent auditor received submitted ballots through a secure electronic platform, then verified, tallied, and certified the results. Still to come, Pete Prisco. What does this mean going forward? Are we going to start seeing games more in different countries, or is it going to come to a town right near you? That's ahead. Yeah, HQ.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.